Well, welcome everyone. I'm delighted to have my friends Kevin and Lavinia together on this Zoom chat. Kevin and I met 6 years ago. Is that right? 2015. And Kevin was on staff with InterVarsity and part of our InterVarsity's Link program, which works with the International Fellowship of Evangelical Students, which I am now a part of overseas. And I'd also just happened to live around the corner from the hotel where we stayed in Jerusalem. So it was almost inevitable. So welcome. And we would like to just talk about what it's like to live in Israel, particularly at this time of the year in March, because we will be there next March. So let's start out by talking about the weather. What is it like today? What can we expect?
Well, I would say the weather in February and March in Israel can be turbulent. It can change day to day. So currently today, temperature was 16 degrees Celsius, putting that probably somewhere low 60s. Tomorrow it's supposed to be high 70s and sunny. The next day it's supposed to rain. So one of our first pieces of advice for coming to Israel during this time is to prepare with different layers. So make sure you have warm weather clothing, but also a coat that you can throw on just in case, preferably even something maybe that might be rainproof, because we are still in the season that is considered the rainy season. It doesn't mean it's going to rain every single day you're here, but there's always the chance. So.
And for women, I would highly suggest having a nice scarf, like a thick material scarf, because I had it a lot in, especially Jerusalem or places where it's very windy, that during the day it's super hot, but in the mornings and evenings you're feeling a bit chilly. So just like having it around you to warm you up, but also going to holy sites and you have like a t-shirt and it's not covering your shoulders as much, to have something to cover up a little bit, or if you have a little bit of cleavage. So having a scarf with you that's a neutral color that you can combine with all your capsule wardrobe or whatever you're packing, that's highly recommendable. And yeah, I can also say I lived in Tel Aviv for a couple of years, and visiting then Kevin when we were dating, who lived in Jerusalem, had also within a day changing of weather.
Actually, just today we went down to the Dead Sea as a family. We have 2 small children. We decided to do an outing, and the weather was completely different there than it is in Jerusalem, because that's below sea level, and Jerusalem's equivalent of about 2,500 feet above sea level. So wherever you're traveling, you may be in Tel Aviv in the morning and it's going to feel like Florida. It's going to be hot and humid. Then you get up to Jerusalem and suddenly it's cooler and windy just because of altitude differences.
So I personally, like, what I often do is wearing dresses or skirts that are above your knees, so they're kind of modest enough, but also having leggings with me, so I can during the day can take the leggings off, go to a bathroom, change quickly, and just adjust my wardrobe during the day wherever I'm going and what it feels like, if it's more cloudy or sunny, because this time of the year you can never be sure. So having like lightweight leggings or stockings, a scarf, this really helps, especially for women, to adjust for the weather.
And just to explain, the weather's a little chaotic here because we have the Mediterranean, for us it's that way, the Mediterranean Sea, so we get all the hot, moist air from that, but we have the desert directly behind us, and those are always kind of hitting each other. So we can have clouds develop pretty quickly, we can have storms come up.
Dust storms.
And so it's just wise to pack kind of with some options for you. Also, my wife brought up a really good thing about visiting holy sites and packing, not just in weather, but also to make sure that you're bringing stuff that would be considered appropriate for entering a holy site, which for men means, for example, not wearing shorts.
For women too.
For women too, yes. Women can wear pants, but
wear pants.
You're not allowed to wear any shorts.
Yes.
Also, same thing for men, you can't wear anything that shows your shoulders. So you need to wear something that's either comes down part way or long sleeve. So, yeah.
So I'm thinking of maybe like a rain jacket and having an insulated vest that I could wear underneath it. That would kind of cover the bases for me.
Yeah. So most of the time, like right now, I'm wearing a pair of jeans and a button-up shirt, and that is suitable for most of the day,
Mhm.
whether it's kind of warm or cold.
Yeah.
So
And we'll be moving around a lot, so kind of generating our own heat that way too. So you don't want to dress too warmly.
that is
Yeah.
very true. So yeah, I guess I
A
would
t-shirt
encourage you
is
also
fine, yeah.
to pack stuff that you feel comfortable having in your bag that isn't going to weigh you down. So like bringing a super heavy coat, not necessary, but having something lightweight, as Gordon was saying, even something that has maybe an insert that you can zip out, so you could put on a raincoat if it's just rain, put on something that's a little fleece if it is cold. So yeah.
Okay, sounds good. And one of the benefits of this time of the year, as being a part of the rainy season, is that there's flowers blooming. You don't see
Oh, yeah.
that in the summer.
No, it's especially when you get up to the Sea of Galilee, which I'm sure you guys will be visiting. The hillsides will be green.
Beautiful.
There'll actually be beautiful wildflowers all around. Even sometimes, depending on what the season's been, this last year, we actually had so much rain that we even had a bloom of wildflowers along the Dead Sea, which was a very special time. I don't think it had happened
I
for
think
16
Yeah,
years or
16
something.
years or so. The first time in 16 years. It was beautiful.
So we hope all the rain will be here before you guys arrive, so you'll have beautiful flowers.
Yeah, that sounds good. So I think March is one of the best times to visit, at least for that reason, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
And
really
it's
great.
also because touring around and walking and being outside, and if it's too hot, it's also not as good. Dehydration is always important, but yeah, I think March is perfect.
Yeah. Plus, it also gives you an idea that the weather in Israel is not just desert. I was telling Gordon in our previous conversation that most of the time when I see biblical movies, they always put Jerusalem like in the middle of a desert where it's like, it looks like the middle of Saudi Arabia. And really, our weather is actually, there's a lot of green. You'll see trees all around. And March is a beautiful time to kind of get to experience all of that, because you will see desert areas, but you also see green and you'll see flowers. And for me, it helped the Bible come more alive than all of this is just a desert.
Yeah. 100 years ago, it was more of a desert, but there's been a huge tree planting effort over the last century.
Yeah, especially as you're coming. So I'm originally from Montana in the US, and as you're driving from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, you'll pass through pine forests that are not dissimilar to what I would have seen in Montana. Honestly, that surprised me the first time I visited here. I was like, whoa. So
Yeah.
So you've lived now in Israel for what, 6, 7 years now? What are your favorite places? What should we look forward to?
so for me, I tell people my favorite places. So everywhere you go, that there's a traditional site of something. For example, a church that's supposedly on a traditional site. There's always an alternative tradition, and so the question is, well, we think this was the place, and so for me, the places that become really special are the places that can't be moved. For example, mountains or lakes. So for me, the most special places are the Sea of Galilee, for example, because to visit there and think these are the same mountains and the same hills that Jesus saw.
And with the Sea of Galilee, I remember the first time I went there and I was swimming inside the Sea of Galilee. I was like, wow, that is so cool. I'm swimming in the Sea of Galilee. And I immediately thought about the stories and the fishermen being scared of a storm. I'm like, that's stupid. How could they be scared in this? And then all of a sudden, a huge wave came and I got seasick swimming. And I had to get out because the waves were so strong that I felt unsafe. And I was like, yes, Lord, I know you're teaching me a lesson right now. So this was a really cool spiritual moment. And yeah, like you said, like going to these places where Jesus he really was there and he performed miracles. And
so yes, seeing the scenery of the Sea of Galilee helps for me, the Bible, to come alive. Also, I'm assuming you guys are probably visiting the site of Capernaum, or Kafr Nahum, as we say. So for me, that is always a very, very special place. Other places that I highly recommend, in the city of Nazareth, the Nazareth Village, which is a recreation of a first century Jewish village. It's a Christian ministry, but it's not a theme park. It's more meant to be a experiential thing. So the tour guides will be telling the Bible stories, or will be telling parables, and we'll actually be able to point at things and explain why this parable would have meant something to the people using what they have
And
directly
you
in front
walk
of them.
through it, and there are donkeys around.
Our kids love the
people
donkeys.
are dressed up as
Yeah.
first century people. It's really amazing.
The other place that we also just really enjoy is just walking around the city of Jerusalem, taking in the city, walking around the Mount of Olives. Because once again, when you go visit places like the Garden of Gethsemane or the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the question is, well, according to tradition, this is the site, but we can never be 100% sure. But instead, you walk around the Mount of Olives and you're like, this is the mountain. Like, you can't move a mountain, or with enough faith, we could move the mountain, but thankfully nobody has. So for me, that helps it really come alive, is to remember that the Bible is happening in a very real place. Really brings it alive to me.
And I think for me, also favorite place is the desert, and be it around the Dead Sea area or really south in the Negev. It is so wonderful reading biblical stories, how God is speaking in the desert to people, that he's speaking to places that people think it's quiet. There's quietness. People think about desert maybe as death as well, because nothing can really grow there. But then you go to the desert, and like we said, we saw the desert bloom from a lot of rain, or palm trees or oasis.
Or you see
so much life.
You see the sheep herder. And, we were just in the desert this afternoon. We took our kids down, and we'd pass by, and there would be a guy with 20, 25 sheep just wandering the hillside. He's a shepherd getting his sheep to pasture, or camels wandering the hillsides.
And for us personally, living in Jerusalem, downtown Jerusalem, we often forget that we're actually in the Middle East, because it's so normal to us now. But then going out just a couple of minutes outside Jerusalem, going towards the Dead Sea and being in the desert reminds me, yes, we are in the Middle East, and it's just wonderful. It's so beautiful and so unique. So I love the desert.
You mentioned Capernaum. There's another site along the Sea of Galilee. I'm wondering what your experiences have been there, and that's Magdala, one of the most recent sites that's been excavated.
So I have actually visited Magdala only once. I went there with a friend of ours who is also on InterVarsity staff, and it's very, very fascinating. I know that it's still a dig in progress, so I can't speak on how much there is now, but it was very fascinating to go to. So if you guys get a chance, they have ruins of a synagogue. For those that may not know, Magdala is thought to be where Mary of Magdalene. So one of the arguments is that Magdala was Magdala, and that this was her hometown. And so it's a fascinating place to visit. When I was there, it's not as developed in that there hasn't been as much archaeology as what's been done at Capernaum, but it's fascinating to see, especially. So,
looking forward to visiting it and seeing what has happened since the last time we were there.
Yeah.
We will be in Israel for one Sunday, and some of the people in our group might be wondering if there are opportunities to go to church on Sunday. We have a very packed schedule, but is there a possibility for a Sunday evening service?
Yeah, so there are, most of the Messianic congregations meet on Fridays and Saturdays. A lot of the Arab churches meet Sunday mornings, but there are a few groups that meet on Sunday evenings. And I can think of two of them that especially do their stuff in English. So you don't need to worry about translation or sitting through a service that you don't understand the language. So you have King of Kings, which is located here in City Center. It's more of a Pentecostal style church, and they run a Sunday evening service. They have a lot of international tour groups and visiting people who come through. They do Hebrew worship, but all the sermons and other things are done in English. And then that would be good for those who are from more maybe a Pentecostal or charismatic background. If you're from a more traditional or liturgical background, Christ Church, which is an Anglican church inside the Old City, just inside the Old City, they offer an evening, I think it's called Vespers, but it's more of a traditional liturgical service, but it also has people from all different backgrounds that are there as well. So either of those I've been to both of those. They're wonderful services, but they're also more what suits your style. If you're more charismatic, King of Kings is a wonderful church to go to. If you prefer more traditional, quiet, liturgical style service, Christ Church has a wonderful service as well.
Okay. Of course, we were supposed to be there a year ago, and we were bumped a couple of times, and now, of course, it's a year from now, next March. But you have experienced the same thing we've experienced, the inconveniences of COVID. What has it been like in Israel for the last year, living with that?
Yeah.
So right now, I'm not sure, but a couple of weeks ago, I think Israel was #1 for days in lockdown.
139.
We had so many days in complete lockdown that it definitely very difficult, because doing life here without seeing family, we have 2 small kids, and next time they will see their grandparents will be 2 years. So they haven't seen, like for our daughter, she's not 2 years old yet. And so most of her life, basically, she hasn't seen her grandparents. So these things have been very hard for us personally, working with students, but still we continued on. We tried with Zoom. Life in Israel was ups and downs, because partially they would open up again, like first lockdown, then opening up, then second lockdown, opening up, third lockdown, opening up. And right now they feel like, because there's so many people vaccinated, that everything is opening up again, and they said there won't be another lockdown.
That's the hope.
That's the hope.
We are having an election next week, so
Yeah.
of course that will
3
be a
days.
determination. We actually have a protest going
I'm
on
not
right
sure if you can
outside.
hear, we have like protests right now.
We live about 4 streets away from the Prime Minister's residence, and there's been a protest going on. So yeah, they're saying that they're hopefully going to start allowing tourists in by this coming April.
Wow.
Which is great, because that means by the time you guys arrive, things will have everything will have gotten back to normal. Because right now the big question of is, well, how are hotels going to reopen? What's going to be the policies for that? By the time you guys arrive, thankfully, we hope that everything will be somewhat back to a new normal for the country. But yeah.
Well, we certainly hope so, and we're definitely looking forward to it. I don't know if there's anything else that I think people would like to know. Is there anything else that you would suggest we should talk about?
Can't think of anything, but otherwise also can pass on the contact information.
One of the things I would encourage you guys as you come over here is to remember that there's a lot of stuff going on here. Maybe for some of you, when you think of Israel, you think of biblical, and others of you, when you think of Israel, you think of the conflict that we're currently in. And I think it's really important as you're here to remember that Israel is both of those. So if there is any opportunities for you to kind of be able to explore and read up on what's going on here now, I think that really, really helps. And one of my encouragements to people always is to try to read narratives and information from both sides of the conflict. Because I'll be honest, even my wife and I, none of us have objective truth when it comes to this conflict, because we're all influenced by it. So when you read a book from the Palestinian side, you want to make sure to read a book from the Israeli side, or vice versa, or a book from a Christian Palestinian source and a book from a Messianic source or a Christian Zionist source. It's good to read both of those and know that you're hearing different perspectives and they're looking at the same conflict. And I think that helps because as you're here, you'll have a lot of information coming at you. And I think it's helpful to just kind of already have some grounding in what's going on, why it's going on.
Yeah, that's good advice. Looking back on your experience with other tour groups, is there anything else that has come up that maybe would be good to discuss or mention?
I'm not sure how much free time, because it's always hard on tours having free time, but if there's opportunities to connect with people and I mean, for example, going to a church service and connecting with other people, like with locals. And it could be not necessarily just internationals, but also Jewish people, Muslims, Messianics, Christians, whoever, but just people who live here and asking them.
Not about the
Not
conflict,
just
but just
about the
about
conflict,
life
just
in
about
general.
life, what they like, how the last year has been for them, just connecting with people who live in this country, and asking about their faith as well. Maybe they're not from the same faith. So I think that's my biggest concern sometimes, that I see tour groups coming and they just race through all the sites, but they don't have any connection with anyone, haven't met anyone. And I know it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. I know it out of own experience from traveling around, but if possible, to connect with people in the country.
I think, yeah, that's definitely good advice. And that's something that I try to do, but you're right. It's really challenging when you're leading a tour group.
Yeah. I had one person who once put it best, a tour guide friend of mine here, who said that people come to see all the dead stones and they miss all the living ones.
Yeah.
And it's important for us to try to connect with believers on all the different sides here and hear their stories. As you said, it's difficult with within the time frame that you guys might have, but yeah, we hope that there will be some.
We had it before that a group of students came from Germany, and they asked to connect with international students who are here in Jerusalem. So we just had an informal coffee date in between their schedule, or lunch, like in between their schedule, where they said, we have an hour, we're back in our hotel, we eat just quickly a sandwich in the lobby. Could you bring a student or bring someone, and we can ask them quickly questions and grill them. And we provide them also a sandwich, something to eat. And it was just a very quick thing for the student who I brought. It was just an hour of their time. It was not a big deal, but it was nice for the tour to have a face, to ask someone, to connect. So I think it's definitely possible. It needs to be prepared somewhat for things like that. But yeah, it's nice to connect with someone and have then a memory of the trip. Like, oh, I remember my Israel trip and meeting this and this person, and praying for this person, and praying for their prayer requests as well.
And it can even be if you're on a tour group, when you're in a restaurant, talk to your waiter or waitress or the person at the hotel. Just ask them a question like, oh, so do you live here? Let's say you're in the city of Nazareth. Do you live here in Nazareth? And if they do, ask them a question about, like, how long has your family lived here in Nazareth? Or what's your favorite thing about Nazareth? Just to find out a little bit about them. And it will help you feel like you're connected not just to the sites of the land, but to the people as well. Even if it's just a short conversation like that.
That adds a very rich dimension to the tour. Yeah, absolutely right. The last time we came, we brought 8 books, I think it was, for your library.
And actually 3 of them are currently being used to lift up our laptop. But I do use them for other things.
As well for reading.
Oh, good. Well, you may not have a list now, but if there's things that you need us to bring next year, please let us know.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much.
We're glad to do that. And we're looking forward not only to seeing you in Jerusalem, but seeing Kenny and Zippy as well.
Yeah, our daughter will be 2.5, and our son will be 4 when you guys are here. So
good. Well,
our children now were born here in Jerusalem, and it's home for us now. So we need to meet you guys when you're here. And of course, if you have any questions, we are happy. Gordon has our contact information, and Gordon, you're welcome to give that out to anybody. We have a secure email address, so you can even ask us more direct questions about safety or anything that you might have. You're welcome to. We would love to make ourselves available as a resource.
Fabulous.
But yeah, we look forward to welcoming you guys here and connecting with you, even if it's maybe just you guys are all stopping for a coffee somewhere on your way to something, and we can just come by and say hi real quick.
Definitely looking forward to it. All right. Well, we'll sign off the recording now, and see you next year in Jerusalem.
Yeah.